Our panel, as you can read, is Achieving Success Through Cultural Awareness. We could also use the unofficial title, How Not to Destroy Your Chances of Success by Being Culturally Blind and Stupid. So to have people in a more confessional mode, I've seated them down already. So let me introduce you from far left. Pius Muchiri, the founding CEO of Nabo Capital. Hello.
Hello.
Carolyne Kendi Kilonzo, a business coach, commercial strategist, and brand transformation expert who has also been in leading position in different well-known companies, like, for example, Unilever. So, hi.
Nice to meet you. Hello.
And Risto Kukk, who is Global Real Estate Manager for warehouses and expansions in Africa for Bolt.
Yeah, hello.
So, to get to the business as a starting point, I would invite you to go to full confessional mode. And could you share an anecdotal story from your own experience involving a misunderstanding or a miscalculation related to business culture? So, who wants to confess first?
Maybe who wants to go? Ladies first. Okay. This is when ladies first makes sense. Huh? So, good afternoon. Is it morning or afternoon? Good morning, everybody. So this is a full confession, as I've been briefed. So, so my experience, I think, so as introduced, I have been building brands in Africa for about 24 years across different markets. And when I was at Unilever, I moved from Kenya and went to work in South Africa. So based in South Africa, in Durban, so working within that context, but then working on the region. And so in Kenya, my bosses and my whole career, I had a specific type of boss, right? Who, communication style was very much what I was used to. When I went to South Africa, I got a Dutch boss. And this Dutch guy was very Dutch. And and what he did is he used to give feedback. So we're in a meeting, and whether it's good feedback or bad feedback, you get it straight. And it really crushed my confidence because I was like, this guy, and definitely where I come from, when you're getting feedback, especially, in front of either your peers or people who report to you, it's usually in private. So I went to talk to my mentor then, who was a Ghanaian boss, and he was an MD, Yao, and I was like, Yao, hey, these people are rough. He's racist. In fact, I went into, he's racist, he's mean. But again, and for me, this is the big takeout, is when I understood the culture and understood that it was actually a business culture issue, it was a communication style. So in Kenya, or in most African cultures, positive feedback is given in public, and not so positive feedback you give one-on-one. Right? And that's just the way we manage it, because it matters, respect and dignity. And my interpretation of that was that. And then when I learned that, going forward, I understood, okay, so when I'm in certain contexts, it's okay, right? If you get feedback, you understand it's the intent of it is not negative, but then also being very intentional when I'm working with Africans, when I'm working with Kenyans, to make sure that I manage that balance. So that's my confession.
Sounds horrible. I actually thought that also in European countries it would apply the same rule, that good feedback publicly, bad feedback only privately. But I'm a bit afraid of Dutch now. But,
yeah, well,
but well, you managed. Yeah. So, Pius.
Yeah, you'd think that for an African to invest in Africa is easy, but it also has its nuances and challenges. I remember 2008, we made a decision to start investing across the continent. And guess what was my first country of visit? Nigeria. And I remember on that flight, it was the most anxious flight I've ever had in my life, because I had never been to Nigeria. I had read all manner of stories about Nigeria. And on that flight, I had big questions in my mind. Number one was, who will I find on the ground? Number two would be, will I be able to find a worthwhile investment? And can I trust putting my money in that investment? And number three, even if I found a good opportunity, will I be able to repatriate my money back to Kenya? I have to confess, I think I prayed the whole flight. There was no other way of calming my nerves. I landed in Nigeria, and the moment I disembarked from the flight, there was someone waiting for me, and I passed through security, very quickly. And the next thing, I was being bundled in this, what do you call it? Double cabin, pickup double cabin. And there were guards on my right hand, my left hand, the guards in front, there were sirens on top. And oh my God, I was like, what have I gotten myself into? And, we were overlapping, and, I really wondered whether I was actually doing investment or I was in politics now or something. Or, I felt like an endangered species. I felt there was too much attention. But when I landed there, I found the warmest people that I've ever met. It's still one of my places that I love meeting. Very hospitable, very welcoming. From the moment you land like this until you take your flight back, they fully take care of you. I can't remember paying a bill in Nigeria, and that is really part of them building the relationship with you. It's only a 40-minute flight to Accra, so I ended up in Accra. They are not exactly the same, but there are lots of common things in their cultures, including who cooks the best rice. They call it jollof rice. It's still a debate, but that was 2008. The first deal I did was in 2011. And it took me 2 to 3 years to do my first deal. Everything else was about building the relationships, building trust, getting to know even the companies and them showing me around. And I remember what really gave me the final push to put in my investment. I had been there for about 2 weeks of doing due diligence, and I had gone for lunch, and I was coming back, and I was in a cab, and I asked the cab guy, "Do you invest in this bank?" Because it was a bank that I was doing due diligence on, and he's like, "This bank is for rich people." Like, what? And it was like a jigsaw puzzle. Everything fell in place. And I came back, and I asked my board, I think now I understand this company. Now we can put in money. October 2011, put about $3 million. And March 2012, it had tripled in value because I had taken 2 to 3 years to understand what the problem was. But just that cab guy helped me to unlock that it was time for me to put in the money. So my learning was in Africa, relationship take precedence more than the legal structure. And that's sometimes if you really want to do your deal, you have your best product, you're convinced, it can seem like it is delaying you, but it really has a big payoff.
How do you know when the time is ripe? How do you determine that, okay, now the relationships are solid enough that I can start putting my money into that?
I remember just when I was having my final meeting, which was also dinner with my local partners, and they looked at me in the eye and they said, "We have chemistry. We like you." And I cannot put money to how much that meant. There were many other people who wanted to do the deal, but they looked at me in the eye and they said, "We like you." And I remember the day I pulled the trigger and we bought off the stock. It was really, it was an issue of hang. I got calls from London, like, "Pius, how did you pull it off?" There were people waiting to do the same thing in London. It gave me the heads. Even though it's taken me almost 3 years to get there, it gave me that final finish ahead of everybody else.
So, Risto, where's your embarrassing story?
Embarrassing story. Those are many very personal ones, but also some not so personal ones. But what I can say is that hearing these examples, I can vouch for the same things from my own side. Like starting with the Dutch kind of example is that I felt the same way because Estonians by nature are also very direct, and ending up with some kind of, let's say, hidden disputes that you can feel that progression in terms of communication does not happen that fluently anymore. And it later came down to the fact that I was perceived direct, which is again very common in our culture, but it's not so common dealing with our African colleagues or sort of not counterparts, but let's say partners in different cities. So Bolt is operational in 9 different African countries, and we have physical representation in at least 7. So I've been doing commercial real estate deals in all of them, fitted out offices. So we're actually integrating local artisans who might not even know how to send an invoice. They don't even have an email, all of that kind of a thing. That it's been a very enlightening experience and filled with many stories. And I can vouch for Lagos Airport. It's a very anecdotal experience. Definitely, if you have that opportunity, give it a go, but with some cautions in mind. But my personal one from Kenya, because we just recently did a project there, and it was just, again, a very simple but a prominent difference how do you do business in Estonia versus, let's say, in Kenya, is that we were waiting for a subcontractor to come on site, and our fit-out company told me that he's going to be in, like, he just called me, he's going to be in 15 minutes. He said he's coming. So I'm like, okay, 15 minutes, let's do it. It's like, immediately he replied, no, like, let me call you. And it took like 45 minutes until the guy arrived. So it's just these kind of time difference. And then when you're on the spot, you can actually totally vouch for the understanding of why things do take time, because there's traffic. There's a lot of hustling and like chaos going on, but in a way it's controlled. So it just takes time to get used to this, but at the same time it's like still anecdotal that sometimes I kind of get lost myself, that you do build relationship, you do build trust, and then you're just like immediately reverting back to your own natural state of doing business, that like, because for the fit-out guy, we already know how we're gonna deal with the time pressure and stuff like that. And then when another individual comes in, I kind of immediately expect the same, but it's never the same. So we start from scratch again and all of that.
Well, how do you prepare yourself for those unexpected things? As I was mentioning yesterday, I was quoting Donald Rumsfeld to Kendi, that there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns. So when you are going to another country, another continent, maybe in your case, in another African country, in your case, Pius was mentioning prayer. Maybe you can suggest some of the best prayers, and maybe some saints who are prone to helping business people. But how else? What do you do? Can you read up? Can you call up somebody? What do you do?
I'd say relationships are infrastructure in Africa, and therefore the most important thing when you are investing in the continent, I realize, including myself, is the big question: who do I trust? When I land, who will hold my hand? You need to identify that person, and I've seen that work very well for some and work terribly for others. Let me explain both. I have seen a case, and I won't mention names. There is this, especially where you're coming from developed economies and you have lots of capital that you want to deploy and you've seen a massive opportunity. There is this compelling feeling that you want to align with the politicians, or you want to align with the, political guns in the country. And I have seen that road over and over. It doesn't work well. The best thing is to look for business partners who you're aligned. And that I've also seen work very well. Nabo Capital is a third-generation investment firm. Our parent company started in 1967. And it was positioned as a local partner for foreign investment companies that were coming to invest in the country, because most of the African countries were just getting independence. The Stanchart, the Barclays, all those, they were setting up in the continent then. And I've seen those relationships sustained over decades, because there is institutional governance behind it. There is well thought out, not just a partner, but also the institution around the partner, who is able to navigate those relationships and also help you to overcome the obstacles, the local obstacles. I remember one of our partners, Coca-Cola, was slapped with about 3 billion shillings of tax. That's a lot of money. And we used our local networks and capabilities to turn that around, and it came out. We won the case against the tax collector of the country. So you need this. You need a local partner. I cannot think of any other better way to start making an investment like finding a local partner.
And on the streets, it's called I know a guy. You have to know a guy in Africa. Every time you just must know a guy. I think for me, the other thing, which is more even a mindset, is really curiosity and really approaching every new market with curiosity, right? And I think the biggest challenge, and I like what you were saying, sometimes even coming from Kenya, when you're going to West Africa, or you're going to another market, going with the mindset of this is how it is, or this is how it should be, right? And I think that's usually the beginning of the end. So really going in with real curiosity, with a growth mindset to learn and to understand, because there's already a system. Even if the system is not the one you have, it's not what you know, but there's already a system. And I really strongly believe that you cannot change or improve something you don't understand. So spending a lot of time with the right mindset of curiosity, really trying to understand and trying to engage and immerse. Because once you immerse into a culture and immerse and spend time with the local partners and spend time in places, the cab drivers, those kind of the Bolt drivers. See what I did? But when you spend time, there are things which will come to you, right? Like he described, in a way that you'll be like, oh wow, this is why. Because most of the time, and in my work, when it comes to building brands, we talk about, it's really understanding what's behind the behavior, right? What's the motivation behind the behavior? So you might be looking at something at the surface, but really it's about curiosity and time that gets you to understand, oh, this is why they think like that. This is why they behave like that. And once you do that, then you really understand and know what you need to do to actually connect or actually build.
You're in the business of transformation, basically. So could you give maybe a bit more specific example of going to another country, and you have to actually make a change there? How do you do it? Or how have you done it?
Yeah, so one of the big brands in Kenya, it's a margarine brand, it's called Blue Band. And Blue Band is a big regional brand. So in my experience, I've worked on both local brands, regional brands, and global brands. So Blue Band was a very strong Kenyan brand that we wanted to go launch and grow. We were launching, but we had the numbers of 200 million Nigerians. So we're like, if we crack Nigeria, we're good. So the whole idea was go and launch, grow the market. So when we went to Nigeria, and in Kenya, bread, children eat, to the proposition for Blue Band is you have bread in the morning, you put your margarine on it, and then the thing that makes the brand different was the vitamins, right? So the omegas and the things and the oils have that actually are good for growing kids. That's the proposition. Fantastic. So we're like, if we go there, and then that's what people are paying a premium for. So in a market like Kenya, a brand like that, people are willing to pay a premium. We went to Nigeria and West Africa, and it was both Anglophone and Francophone. So in French West Africa, first, they're French. So they don't do, and Blue Band is an ambient stable margarine, which means that you don't need to put it in the fridge. So you go to French-speaking Africa, and they're like, we take butter, okay? And they put the margarine and the butter in water, even if they don't have refrigerators, but they're not gonna compromise that. So we literally had to launch a refrigerated product for that market. Yeah, we couldn't just come and transfer the same thing that we're doing in Anglophone and the rest of the markets. So that was that. When we went to Nigeria and Ghana, we found that they eat food for breakfast. So bread is a little snack that they do later in the day. I can see them there nodding, they know. And they eat like food, and the food is rich. And it already has all these nutrients that we are propositioning to actually sell.
Trying to sell to the Eskimos.
As a premium, exactly. And we're telling them pay more. And they were like, no, thank you. So we literally had to change our strategy. And have a different product. So again, we had to have a product which is only for bread, spreading for bread. And then the biggest growth driver for the business at that point, because it was just to make sure that the price is right for people to consume. It wasn't about now a premium. It was like, let's get the price right. And eventually the business strategy ended up being, let's invest in a factory. Right? Because the product was coming from Ghana, the price was expensive, so that ended up being the intervention. Not more marketing, not innovation on the product. It was accessibility, making it work for the right price, and actually get it worked in the market.
Risto, what was your first point of entry when you went to Africa? What country, and what have you learned ever since?
My first deal was in Kenya. It was back in 23, so it's been for the past 3 years, and it's been like 24 plus different projects afterwards. But I got that just handed to me, that deal with it, without ever being on the mainland, and just was kind of, again, trying my best to understand where we are. So as it was just kind of previously mentioned as well, that you need to be curious of like how things are going, but at the same time, as our secretary mentioned, the predictability is something that is very different, and my prediction was that, okay, yeah, it's Africa. People are very communicative, they're open, and we can do business. If it's being said that it will be done on that time, it will be done. And then I understood that not only that it cannot not be done, it might be done very poorly. So my first experience with a subcontractor was a very enlightening one, because that person was not out for the best interest, and was actually like understanding that on the other side there is a partner that might not know everything that he should know. And then as I might not have another opportunity, I'm going to do the things that he did, and we ended up in a very poor stated situation. So it was enlightening, and afterwards I've just been again curious of how different markets operate, how different people operate, because within the market it's very, let's say, surprising how many different approaches you can find, especially as your prediction towards how to do business constantly changes. So you engage with one person with a certain amount of backstory that as you were building up the knowledge and the experience from, and then suddenly you get another building block, and as Pius was saying before, that, you know, just suddenly something starts to fall in place, and then you approach it completely different because you're such kind of like a newbie that, but at the same time you want for everybody to win-win. You want to win yourself, and you want the company to win, because like based upon that experience, what we want to bring to Africa, at least from both sides, regards to offices, is the European standard, which is not really the common one, and they're very much in line with, like, you know, it's been like this. You know, this is what we can offer. But what I've found out within the huge amount of projects that we've done is that if you prompt them, kind of like different subcontractors, prompt them long enough, it's not that they don't know how to do excellent quality and excellent work. It's just nobody prompts them locally that much, so that we kind of ask, like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? What if you do it like this? This is not okay. Even if you send sometimes a specific set of requirements, people think locally a bit different, and they're going to come up with a completely different solution which you didn't want. So again, you prompt, and in the end, you're going to be like getting what you wanted. It's just you got to have patience.
Can you give an example of a completely different solution that you didn't want?
I mean, even if I'm sending a room plan, luckily I have some South African landlords here with us as well. But it's just like you're sending a room plan, you're sending some exact items, and then sometimes you're just getting responses of completely different. Like, but I just sent the specific room plan that I want, or a specific product. And you're not getting the exact response because actually they're thinking that, I didn't find it first enough. It's perhaps too expensive. They're like thinking ahead sometimes a lot, which they don't inform us about it. And from their perspective, they're doing something good. But at the same time, for us, it's like, we're a large company, we have some regulations, we have some needs which they might not know about. And yeah, like whether it's IT equipment, whether it's room plans, whether it's actually we wanted a color green and then we get blue. So it's just because somebody thought a bit differently, because they do take ownership of a certain amount of and I'm just generalizing and not in a bad way, but it's just like, a specific contractor is kind of seeing this as their own pride and joy. They're going to do something which we haven't agreed with because they think that this is nice. And it's not really what we wanted.
Would you agree with him, with the understanding he has gathered while working in Africa?
100%. I think he intimated where he said, you have to be flexible and make changes as you go, because one of the things about Africa and growing up in Africa is you grow up in a place where systems don't usually work the way they're supposed to work, and because of that, people develop adaptive ways of making it work, right? So ultimately, if you don't understand that, the person he's referring to is actually being flexible and adaptive, and is actually doing it. And you really know you know what you know. What you know is what you know, and what you know is how you know. So I like his take of just keep the engagement. And actually, ultimately, it connects to what he was saying, where that's also building the relationship. Because the more you engage, the more you're prompting, what he's calling prompting, the more that person is understanding your perspective, and the more you're understanding their perspective. And it's very engaging. I think the biggest challenge would be when, if you really think that you just want to depend on the process and systems, and and this is the way it's supposed to work, back to how it's supposed to work. And ideally, that's where I think most people go wrong, where you're like, why are we having so many meetings? Why am I having to ask so many times? But ultimately, if you see that as part of relationship building, if you see that as part of trust building and getting them to see your perspective, but also you getting to see their perspective, then within that is when you actually get the alignment that you need.
Risto wanted to comment.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on top of that, we come from Estonians from a very specific historical part, and we do business in a certain way, which is very different to how business is done and how trust is built, and how life is lived in Africa. And understanding this, that as we are exactly, I would say, the opposites of one another, that for many Estonians, even Tallinn seems too cluttered, and they want to go away from this clutter to forests and just to live in their summer cottage. And compare this to life in Nairobi, it's like, the exact opposite, that the people that facilitate relationships and communication and a lot of discussion, we just want to Slack message, email, and like you cannot build relationships in Africa based upon that. So you need to go there, you need to be on the spot. And for Africans, it's the same, that, the experience that we have like various people from various African countries living here in Estonia in our and working for our company. And the experience that they've had is like also vastly different. And it's just to kind of stay in Estonia, understand of again, the Dutch example that, it's just not that we are very angry people. We're just like, direct. This is our nature. This is our background, how we grew up with parents and grandparents that weren't really communicative at all. So you just basically grew up with your own thoughts. And if you asked something, you were like, shoo. So this is again something that you would need to notice if you're going to do business there, that be there, be curious, and open-minded, and build trust based upon that.
Yeah, we're slightly tone deaf. What can we do? Well, Pius, you mentioned how you surprised colleagues in London when you got deal done in Nigeria. What are the
That was Ghana.
Ghana?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ghana. Yes. What are the main pitfalls and misconceptions when people start doing business in African countries? What do you see well, let's gossip about others.
I think the first one is that when people are coming from the big economies looking to invest in the continent, they look at Africa as the market. But Africa is actually 54 negotiations. And that tends to completely put all your plans in disarray, because if you think about the regulations, legislation, totally different. When I was investing just in my neighbor, Tanzania, they had this regulation that foreigners cannot acquire more than 75% of a publicly listed company. And they did an IPO, and they made a small exception. They said, if no Tanzanian is available to buy whatever is being sold, then we'll open it up to East Africans. And it stopped there. And there were no Tanzanians to take it. It was a big deal. It was about $20 million. And for like 4 months, I was the biggest investor in Tanzania. And with every single transaction, the regulator would call me on my phone, Pius, is this yours? And I say, it is mine, and they would approve it. So can you imagine the regulator comes to that level of being personal to know who exactly is buying this stock? So that's very different in Kenya. Once the regulation is out, it is followed through. But here, the regulator wants to give you a call, and there is a relationship now so that you have to build with the regulator. The other thing is consumer behavior is totally different. We were investing in Egypt. So my team brought me this investment thesis, and I'm like, what do you mean? A company that sells croissant is worth tens of millions of dollars. How can a company that sells croissants be worth more than... Then only to realize, oh my gosh, in Egypt, croissant is part of their culture. They eat it for breakfast. It's a snack. And where we come from, there are many people who've never even eaten a croissant.
Can't even pronounce it.
Yeah, you can't even pronounce it. So consumer behavior is very different. The other thing also is the language is a big one, because it influences where you can go and where you can't go. Until today, I have never cracked the Francophone countries because we have a huge language barrier. If you can't speak French, even though the French people know how to speak English, they prefer to still speak French, so you struggle with French. So those are some of the things that the tax. Those are there are 54 tax regimes that you have to contend with. So, in a nutshell, Africa is not the market. It's the African markets that we should be talking about when you're thinking about going into the continent.
Just a quick remark regarding language is a little fun fact regards to Estonian and Swahili speakers is that both the languages are very similar linguistically. So there's something that connects us that if you would read an Estonian newspaper
Yes.
to an Estonian, of course not understanding what it says, you would have a very little accent. And the same for Estonians to speak or read Swahili.
That's interesting.
So so that's something that connects us.
That's very interesting because also I used to work for Toyota in East Africa, and the Japanese have the same pronunciation as Swahili, so they used to pick up the Swahili language really fast. So we have
cool.
we have something in common too.
Yeah.
I would like to ask a follow-up about the language issue, because I know one example how the European country, Belarus, only foreign advertisers buy advertisements in Belarusian language because everybody else is consuming it in Russian language. But how do you pick a proper language for advertisements or something similar for business culture in African countries? Because it can be sensitive because of the colonialist roots and also because the countries are so ethnically diverse. How do you do it?
Well, I think first, most of the countries have an official language, right, which helps. And you'll find like people will go to school and will learn these languages to a certain point. But when it comes to advertisement and when it comes to connection, what we've seen, especially with technology and with digital marketing channels, is there's a lot of vernacular. So it's a lot of micro connecting and micro engaging. So you'll find radio, there's a lot of vernacular radio. You'll find even on platforms on TikTok, there's a lot of localization of concepts. So ideally, depending on who the target audience is, and that's why it goes back to you have to understand and be part of the market and understand exactly who you're trying to connect with, then you'll be able to see what makes sense. You'll find for some brands like Bolt, because at the end of the day, it's mostly urban, it's mostly in the big cities, then English and Swahili work. But if you want to go a little bit deeper and there's a micro insight and a micro connection, but all these platforms and all these channels exist, it's really about how do you tap into them and how do you make sure that it works for you.
And the Francophone Africa the issue was still left hanging here. Risto, Kendi, do you have any experience with that cleavage between Anglophone and Francophone Africa?
A lot. Of course, completely different approaches. Also, very, like, as I would say, the Franco part is more towards the Western side, and already Western side versus an Eastern side is again culturally quite different. Bolt is not in any any French-speaking African countries, just for the fact again because the business culture is quite different, and although it's not only French versus English, it's also a bit of Dutch and Portuguese, which we are present as well. So it's yeah, from our side, we've seen there is a lot of business culture differences, and we've seen the reason not to go there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember my first time in Zimbabwe, and the late president Mugabe, whom everybody hated, you know. I was in shock just how British Harare is, despite his hatred. And that tells you how strong the roots of colonial heritage are. So if you come to British colonized countries, then you will tend to see a lot of British heritage there. And if you're coming from European, it's much easier to connect with the former British colonies. The Francophone countries are very intimately connected with Paris. So if you're not French speaking, you can't connect. And that's why I'm not surprised that Bolt is not in Francophone speaking countries. But if you can crack it, the opportunity is immense. I got just to learn the other day that there is a likelihood that there are more francophone. There's more francophone population in Africa than English speaking. I used to think it is the other way around.
Yeah.
Kendi.
Yeah, and remember I told you when in our Blue Band example, we literally had to create another brand for Francophone and another product because you couldn't really just translate. And then what we had to do is, again, back what he said earlier, it's about local partners and getting the right people internally to actually, who understood. So we literally had to have somebody from Cote d'Ivoire as part of the team. And they're the ones who now would help us navigate and actually know who to work with. And when you talk about advertising and everything that we'd be doing in the market, we had to do it with a local partner. So I think for Francophone markets, it's really, it's very different. Actually, it's extremely different compared to Anglophone. And you kind of always need to have a very different, distinct strategy and way of connecting.
And it's not only, we're not only talking about sub-Saharan, it's also about Northern Africa, which is completely, again, different.
Another Arab
Yeah.
speaking region.
Also
Yes.
Africa. And
Also
Yes.
Africa.
we kind of forgot the Northern Africa.
Actually, I tend to I tend to see hotspots. If you're thinking of North Africa, then Egypt becomes the hotspot. If you're interested in that region. If you're thinking of West Africa, then Lagos is a hotspot. If you're thinking of East Africa, then Nairobi is a hotspot. And if you're thinking of Southern Africa, then Joburg is a hotspot. So those are good starting points for anybody who's looking to make inroads. Then you start expanding through the region, just the same way that I've seen the Estonian government has decided to put an embassy in Nairobi to cover the region is a good starting point. They all act as hubs, and you tend to. It's a small capital city. It's like capital cities of the region.
Can you build a brand around this hub that would radiate towards other nations around it? For example, can you,
Absolutely.
I don't know, hire a local star from Kenya to be a brand ambassador for other African nations? Could it work?
It can work, but it also has its sensitivities.
Okay, for example?
For example, if there are lots of Kenyans, because of the rich human resource we have, who are leading companies in Tanzania, in Uganda, in the regional places. But again, there are sensitivities because then also it can also bring some level of repulsion. So it's still, it's a point of contention, but yes, you can do that. It's much easier to grow a brand from Nairobi into Uganda than from Uganda into Nairobi. If you look at some of the products that she's mentioning, Blue Band and all those products, they come through Nairobi and then they're distributed to the other regional countries. And I believe the same thing in South Africa, is the same thing in North Africa and West Africa.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that Unilever specifically used to do very well is create this exchange, right, between markets. And I think that's a really important thing that anybody who's trying to learn and trying to expand, because what they would do is, I was Kenyan, I went to live in South Africa, I'm working on that. There were a lot of South Africans who would come and work in Kenya. A lot of people would go to different markets. And ultimately what that does is you create that exposure within the organization, right? And people understand. So you actually start to build a multicultural culture within the organization, that therefore when we're building something for Cote d'Ivoire, the people from Cote d'Ivoire are there and they're part of it and they're able to build. So I think one of the things that would help, and I think we have a couple of young students here from uni who are here, about 20 Kenyans who are in Estonia. I think those kind of programs are really good because the exposure here, they're able to bring a Kenyan mindset here, but more importantly, when they go back, they're going to be the ambassadors who go back and say, hey, by the way, Estonians are actually not mean people. Their culture is just direct, and they will educate the rest of the Kenyans to know that. And I think more, I keep saying exposure is everything, right? You can't unsee when you are exposed, then you can't undo. right? And that becomes such a powerful tool when it comes to exchanging and globalization and actually getting people to learn and engage with each other.
And yeah, coming back again to that language thing is also the sensitivities around that. We found out also the hard way that the Swahili spoken in Kenya and Tanzania is not the same. So, if you're also responding to a Tanzanian in the Kenyan Swahili. If they would understand to an extent, depending on the person, they might see it a bit off. Like we have it in Europe as well. That my previous companies that I work with, we worked in Scandinavia, and let's say that if you speak Swedish to a Norwegian, they would kind of understand it, but at the same time they would be like, why is a Swede responding to me when I'm actually Norwegian? Let's say if it's a Norwegian company that's providing customer service. So, not that it would be a main blocker, but it's again if you do it at a bigger scale, it's definitely something to note down that perhaps to have a bit more partners rather than less, and thinking that it's a one-stop shop for, let's say I have one representation in Kenya that they will cover easily, Tanzania, Uganda, but I'm not going to invest anything more. But it might be worthwhile to have still local representation.
Absolutely.
We do have audience, not people are still here listening to us. Maybe there are also some questions or comments in the audience. There's a microphone, but okay, well, if not, if nobody wants to, oh yeah, there's one.
Hey, thanks for sharing the experience. What is the most funny or interesting situation that you have been in situations with foreigners? Thanks.
I'm thinking about that.
Funny with foreigners. I think I'll say for sure Estonians. Let me localize it with Estonians, right? And again, as you said, Estonians are very, as you can see, my personality, first, Kenyans are already boisterous and warm, and on top of that, I am a bit on the extra side of openness, and and I think it's funny, and I've noticed in the last couple of days, when you're, in our culture, that's warm, people will meet you there, right? So if you come with that energy, I'll come and join you and meet you with that energy. And also part of what relationship building is, hey, I want to know about your family, I want to know about your children, I want to know about that stuff. That's part of me trying to bond. But I realized in Estonia, there's a little bit of, wait a minute, and it's, and they don't even trust you, and they're like, what is wrong with this person? And and really just trying to read that energy and understand that it's not, the fact that, again, the energy is not coming back in the way that you expect, it's not a thing. So just, that's for me a quick one, just on an energy level, and, engaging, and how, you're asking people about their family, and they're like, why? We're here to talk business, we're here to talk about culture. That's it. So maybe that would be my experience.
Yeah, I used to represent the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, which I won't say the name. I'm not allowed to say it, but you can guess. And first of all, it took 1 year to do due diligence on us. And I remember the level of scrutiny towards the end. For us to start the relationship, they had to send $1 from the US and track it until it arrived before they said, now we are good to go. I had never seen anything like that. Number two, the level of governance and objectivity was unmatched and still unmatched. I was not allowed to take them out for lunch. I was not allowed to buy them coffee. I was not allowed to do all the African things that we're supposed to do. And it was completely awkward. How do this is my largest client, and I'm not allowed to spend even if I buy snacks to be consumed in the office, I am not allowed to overdo it, lest it is interpreted to compromise their objectivity. that's one of the most interesting relationships that I've ever had. A top premium client, and I am unable to show my African hospitality.
Okay, Risto.
Yeah, actually, for Kendi's example, that it's not only that when you ask and we respond to you, like, what are you doing about, like, what are you asking about? It's the same that if another someone would ask me, I would be like, what the hell, what do you want? So it's just like not only towards foreigners, it's between ourselves as well. This is our culture. But my experience is actually something that I want to share with others as well, that if you're interested in the African culture and to kind of set up shop there, you want to know what it's about, you guys, we have a lot of content on Instagram, on TikTok. Most of it's pretty funny. So it's just how life happens. Sometimes you can also find very good news articles as well, what is going on there, to get a better perception. And having a really good opportunity back in the day when I was dating a Kenyan. The experience, again, coming from Estonia, from like my side from Estonia, and of course from her side, it's very different. And it only occurred to me once I saw these nice Instagram reels about how they made, let's say, internal jokes about the culture at home, is that if you're a growing up as a woman or as a girl in Kenya, is that you often go to a boarding school, right? You go to a boarding school, no guys. When you say anything about guys, like, before you're 18, it's like, what are you talking about? No, nothing.
You want to get
and then
pregnant.
as soon as you hit 18, where's husband?
Yeah.
And for me, it was kind of the same thing, that, okay, it moves very fast. It's like, okay, when's that? When's the next step? When's the next step? And Estonia, it's like, no, we want to take our time. It's like, we barely getting married, which is completely the opposite which you have back at home. And it was just like, a very different background, which can be explained if you would, again, absorb some content from online that could explain a bit better, rather than just like, thinking them up on your own. But that was my kind of funny take upon the culture difference.
I hope she has forgiven you.
Not sure.
Have you found a wife? Have you found a wife?
Okay. Finally, maybe Kendi is a professional business coach, but let's all switch to business coach mode now. And could each of you share one simple but effective principle of or habit that tends to help people earn trust, respect, and goodwill, no matter in what culture? Let's start with a professional.
Let's start with the okay. So I think. And an interesting, I like to say the elephant in the room, right? Because most of the time people are like, yeah, they're being kind, and they're like, what about corruption? Yeah, we've had a lot of corruption stories, and even if you go to TikTok and Instagram, we Kenyans are the ones who are the front fighting corruption, right? And I think I'd like to just talk about that because I watched this TED talk, which I don't know, maybe it was a long time ago, by this lady called Chimamanda, and she talks about it's the danger of a single story. And I think for me, that's one of the most powerful thoughts that I would like to leave you with, in the sense that sometimes you just hear one story, one perspective, and you think that it's everyone's experience, it's everyone. So the most important thing for me, habit-wise, is really being able to not take one perspective as the truth, right? And back to what I said, it's really about curiosity. I think when you talk about corruption and you talk about relationships, it's not an African thing, it's a character thing. It's a human thing. It's the same way in the world you can say racism. It's not a European thing, right? It's a human thing, it's a human problem. And that for me is the important thing for us to look at when you're thinking about Africa, when you're thinking about, and you're looking at all the information, because the information is there. When you're building the relationships and filtering through, I think for me a habit is really that thing of how can you not have a single story around any culture. And even for me as a Kenyan, I'm very cautious as I look across Africa to say what are the stereotypes, and making sure that you don't approach things from a stereotypical perspective, and you kind of engage at a human-to-human level. And I think if you do that, you have a better chance. Yeah, you stand a better chance. And because I'm a business coach, and this is the moment I will talk about my business, I actually wrote a book. So part of what I'm very passionate about is teaching, is building capability internally within Africa on how to build brands based on my experience building brands across the continent. And therefore, I put it down, I put my thoughts down. And therefore, this is, again, a helpful manual, I guess, that could help anybody thinking about where do I start? What are the kind of examples in the spirit of telling our stories as Africans, the kind of examples I have. One of the things when I was studying, when I was doing my MBA and all the examples of successful businesses, it was always a company out there, right? And a company that has done well globally. So part of what I've been very intentional about is talk about great brands. In my next book, I'll have Nabo Capital and Bolt. Yes. But this really just also shows examples of successful local Kenyan brands and what they've done to connect and how they've been able to grow and scale in the continent. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to further advice, buy the book. Risto, some free advice.
Free advice from an Estonian, like if to go out there, the less you expect, the easier it would be. Just do your due diligence as much as you can. Reach out to anybody that you know, and calling out that if you need any help locally, as much as I can give from the perception point of view, please reach out. But it's just like try to get as much knowledge, be there on the ground, and the less you expect, the better it will be.
Okay, and Pius, your piece of free advice. Maybe you can also have a book to sell. Feel free.
Yeah, I think we have hammered the main point. Doing business in Africa is a dating experience. I want that to settle. And unfortunately, dating, there is no clear roadmap. It depends on who you're dating. So let's agree on that one. What will not change, regardless of language or whatever, wherever you go, country, is that the biggest opportunity in Africa is solving real problems. I remember 2007. Before 2007, if I received a call that my grandmother was unwell, and she is at least 100 kilometers from where I work and stay, I had to travel all the way to take her to hospital. But since M-Pesa was launched by Safaricom, today, if I receive the same call, I just simply tell whoever is with her, take her to hospital. By the time you reach hospital, you'll have money in your... In fact, they would just give me the pay bill of the hospital. I will pay whatever it costs. Imagine the problem that has been solved. And that's why M-Pesa has been such a success, because it solved a big problem. Coming back to dating, before 2007, if you were dating anyone, for those who are around my age and above, you had to go to point out some landmark, like, for example, a cinema hall, and they say, be at the cinema hall at 11 a.m. Those days we used to keep on.
For the dates.
Be there at 11. And you just go, stand, and wait in faith, believing that she will show up. If she doesn't show up by 11:30, you have no way of communicating, and that date has failed. Since the mobile phone was introduced and Safaricom kept saying the better option, they started charging by seconds, not by minute. It became extremely affordable for everybody. And now, Safaricom has made sure that almost everyone, we have over 100% penetration of mobile phone, and I think about over 80% penetration now of smart. My friend there can correct me if I'm wrong, but that penetration has changed the way of living. I pay my mechanic using M-Pesa. I pay fuel using M-Pesa. I carry no cash at all. I even pay parking fees using M-Pesa. Everything, the whole economy is driven through M-Pesa. And that's why he said, if M-Pesa goes down for 5 minutes, the whole economy goes to a standstill. So they solved a real problem. And there are many other real problems in Africa. And if you can just identify that real problem and go for it and customize and do all the other dating things that we've discovered, I think you're in for a very huge success. And success in Africa is, one, solve the main a big problem. Number two, keep the solution very simple. Africa does not reward sophistication. It rewards simplicity. Keep it simple. Uber, Bolt, all those have succeeded in Africa because the solution is extremely simple. And make it mobile-based. That's the number one, that's another big thing that's going on in Africa. We have too many obstacles that if you can be able to reach me through the mobile phone, you help me overcome anything. And number three is distribution. Whatever you do, it's not about how great a product it is. Africa is a terrain and a half. And if you can be able to tackle distribution through partnerships or through technology, I think you're in for big success. So that would be my free advice. And I look forward for anybody who wishes to venture anywhere in Africa. I'm happy to share my experiences, and I'm happy to help you to find local partners where we are not present.
And also some advice on relationships and romance. Right. Okay. Breakfast was mentioned repeatedly in this panel, which means that probably for many people, lunchtime is here. And luckily, lunch is served downstairs. So thank you for listening. And let's see you at the next panel.